Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking something that hits really close to home and, well, your wallet, for millions of families right across India. We're talking about the commercialization of private school education. We're going to explore how schools actually make their money, the massive regulatory gaps between different states, and the fierce legal battles currently raging over private school fees.
So, let's just dive straight into it with a quick question. It really highlights a massive structural anomaly we're seeing in the education sector today. Think about this for a second. Which one of these do you think drains a parent's bank account more? A year of premium nursery or a government engineering degree? The answer might actually surprise you, and it perfectly sets the stage for our analysis today. Here is our roadmap for the explainer. We'll kick things off with that jarring ROI anomaly, look at how schools monetize beyond just tuition, break down the legal battleground, weigh the pros and cons, and finally give you a solid action plan and talk about how policymakers can fix the system.
All right, Part 1, the ROI anomaly and the massive gap in transparency.
Think about this stark financial reality for a moment. A premium private school nursery in a metro city? That's going to run you anywhere from 80,000 to over 1.5 lakh rupees a year. And that is before any development fees. The crazy part? You are literally paying engineering-level fees for, finger painting and basic socialization, with absolutely zero measurable outcome for the next 12 years. But contrast that with a government engineering college. It costs about 2 lakhs a year, but yields an average starting package of 20 lakhs. That is a roughly 240% return on investment. Higher education is forced into this highly transparent cost-to-outcome framework. But early school education? Total opacity.
Moving right along to Section 2, monetization beyond tuition, and how these costs really inflate.
Because, as any parent will tell you, the basic tuition fee, that's rarely the whole story. Schools often monetize through these hidden, recurring mechanisms. We are talking huge, one-time infrastructure of building fund charges that can easily run into the lakhs. Then you have these mandatory vendor-linked purchases, where schools direct parents to specific shops at severely mocked-up prices. Add to that compulsory smart class tech fees, even if your kid already has a device at home, plus branded stationery and mandatory transport fees that you get hit with even if you live right next door to the campus. Essentially, schools are creating bundled charges for facilities a child might never even use, topped off with annual fee hikes of 8 to 15%, often without any proportional improvement in teaching quality.
And the optics of all these bundle fees have gotten so bad that even school associations themselves are sounding the alarm. Take CAMS, for instance, the Associated Managements of Primary and Secondary Schools in Karnataka. They actually had to issue an advisory to their own member schools. They explicitly warned against raising fees beyond 15%, stating that doing so could amount to commercialization of education. Honestly, when the school associations themselves are cautioning their members against excessive pricing, you absolutely know there is a systemic issue at play.
So, how exactly are governments responding to this? Well, consider this directive from the Directorate of Education in Delhi from April 2026. It explicitly mandates that schools have to operate strictly as no-profit, no-loss charitable institutions. Any commercialization or financial burden on parents is impermissible, and schools must allow open market purchases for books and uniforms. The government is basically saying, hey, a school registered as a charitable trust legally has no right to profiteer. And this isn't just some empty paper directive. Back in 2026, the Delhi chief minister issued stern warnings backed up by actual surprise inspections. The rule here is incredibly clear. No parent can be forced to buy from a single vendor. Schools actually have to suggest 5 to 6 different options. Vendor lock-in is a widely recognized and reportable violation of parental choice, and schools caught violating this face strict action.
Which brings us to Section 3, the legal battleground, regulation versus autonomy. Now, schools aren't just taking these directives sitting down, and that sparked a fierce nationwide legal tug-of-war. Just look at the pattern over the last few years. In 2022, Punjab ordered schools to display multiple vendor options after parents complained of harassment. Fast forward to 2023, Jammu and Kashmir outright banned mandatory book and uniform shops. In 2025, Delhi passed a massive School Fee Transparency Act. But then, in 2026, Delhi High Court litigation set boundaries, basically stating the government can prevent profiteering, sure, but they cannot completely redesign unaided private school fee structures. The underlying law prohibiting capitation fees already exists nationally under the Right to Education Act. So the real gap here? It's in enforcement, not legislation. Looking at this impartially, what we have here is a massive clash of legal principles. On one side, you have state governments arguing, accurately by the way, that the right to administer an educational institution does not include the right to profiteer. Education is not a commercial enterprise. But on the other side, school associations are pointing to Supreme Court precedents. They argue that these strict regulations violate their fundamental administrative autonomy under Article 30 of the Constitution. It is an incredibly complex balancing act between preventing exploitation of parents and respecting institutional independence.
Let's move to Section 4, Pros versus Cons, an objective assessment.
It is super important to neutrally weigh this out, right? Because private involvement in education isn't all bad, not at all. Private investment undeniably brings in modern labs, better sports facilities, and international curricula like IB and IGCSE much faster than the government could. And yes, having a one-stop purchasing shop at the school is a genuine convenience for really busy working parents. However, the cons are definitely significant. The system really risks turning education into a wealth filter instead of a merit filter. Informal vendor monopolies are inflating prices by 2 to 3 times the open market rates, and the total cost of ownership is incredibly opaque, with no public correlation to show that paying these exorbitant fees actually results in better learning outcomes for your child.
All right, Section 5, your action plan as a parent for navigating this system.
So, if you're a parent trying to navigate this maze, here is a highly practical action plan for you. Step 1, know your state's Fee Act laws. If a school demands a building fund, you need to know if your state bans capital expenditure charges via tuition, like Delhi does. Step 2, actively demand vendor lists in writing. Refusal to provide one is a reportable violation. Step 3, request board result trends and teacher retention rates before admission. Seriously, use the exact same ROI scrutiny you would apply to a college admission. And finally, Step 4, don't passively accept opaque fees. Use your state's grievance redressal mechanisms actively. Documented collective complaints are historically what trigger real policy responses.
Finally, Section 6, Fixing the System. Let's look at some policy recommendations.
Because, let's be real, we can't just rely on parents playing an endless game of whack-a-mole with local schools. Policymakers have to address these gaps at a structural level. The highest leverage interventions aren't just local fee caps. Experts are recommending enacting a uniform National Fee Transparency Act to set a firm baseline standard. We also need a national outcomes portal. Imagine a system giving us NIRF-style rankings for private schools based on teacher attrition and board results. Furthermore, the government absolutely needs to close the tax-exempt trust loopholes, especially where a tax-exempt trust runs the school while an affiliated private company supplies books and uniforms at a massive markup. But ultimately, the real long-term fix is investing heavily in government school quality to create genuine competitive pressure that regulation alone simply cannot replicate.
I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. We demand rigorous ROI transparency from higher education, right? We scrutinize engineering colleges, demanding placement data, average salary packages, and national rankings before we spend a single rupee. Yet we blindly hand over comparable sums for early schooling with zero outcome data. Until we expect that exact same level of rigorous ROI transparency from our private schools, are we just accepting a massive market failure? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those tough questions, and I'll catch you next time.
If you like the video, please like, share, and subscribe.